Aaron Mercer, a skilled engineer and devoted single father, is fired by CEO Caroline Voss after corrupt executive Preston Wade falsifies records to blame him for reporting a dangerous defect in hospital monitors. Struggling to support his daughter, Sadie, Aaron takes odd jobs and quietly helps his elderly neighbor Henry Callahan with repairs, groceries, and medical care, unaware Henry is Caroline's grandfather. After Henry suffers a mild stroke, Caroline discovers Aaron has been selflessly caring for him and is forced to confront the man she wrongfully dismissed. Henry reveals Aaron's preserved safety reports while records manager Elena provides copied evidence, proving Preston suppressed Aaron's warnings, altered timestamps, and framed him to hide defective medical devices shipped to hospitals. Caroline realizes even Henry's heart monitor is one of the faulty units, prompting her to halt shipments. Recall the device's fire. Preston cooperate with investigators and publicly clear Aaron's name. Although offered an executive position, Aaron agrees to return only if the company establishes an independent safety office. Whistleblower protections, transparent investigations, and records integrity led by Elena. With the reforms implemented, no patients are harmed. Aaron's reputation and finances are restored. Sadie's future improves. Henry recovers, and Caroline gradually earns forgiveness through consistent accountability rather than words alone. Do not let him inside. Caroline Voss stood in the doorway with one hand pressed against the frame, her voice sharp enough to cut through the rain. Aaron Mercer stopped beneath the yellow porch light water dripping from his brown work jacket, a paper bag of medicine in one hand and a dented toolbox in the other. For 6 months he had imagined seeing the woman who had fired him. He had imagined anger. He had imagined questions. He had never imagined finding her inside Henry Callahan's little white house on Cedar Street. Caroline stared at him as if he had followed her there. "How did you find my grandfather?" she demanded. "I did not find him," Aaron said quietly. "He lives next door. You expect me to believe that? No." Aaron lifted the medicine bag. "I only need you to give him these." Thunder rolled somewhere beyond the dark Missouri hills. Rain tapped against the porch roof, steady and cold, while the old brass wind chime beside the door trembled without making a sound. Then a weak voice rose from the hallway behind Caroline. "Do not close that door, Caroline." Henry appeared slowly, leaning on his cane, his face pale beneath a crown of silver hair. "You already closed one door on that man." Caroline turned. "Grandpa, you should be sitting down. And you should be listening." Henry's eyes moved toward Aaron and something softer entered them. "He is the reason I am still alive. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity, grace, and second chances, hit like and subscribe. Stories like this remind us that quiet goodness is never truly wasted." Now back to Aaron Mercer. Caroline looked again at the man standing in the rain. 6 months earlier, she had signed his termination papers in less than 4 minutes. She remembered the worn employee badge clipped to his shirt. She remembered the calm in his eyes when everyone else in the conference room had treated him like a problem that needed removing. Most of all, she remembered his final words. "One day you will wish you had read the whole report." At the time, she had called it bitterness. Now he stood outside her grandfather's house, carrying heart medication, chicken soup, and the small wrench Henry preferred for the loose kitchen faucet. "How long have you been coming here?" she asked. "Every day since March." "Why?" "Because he needed help." Caroline gave a cold laugh, but it did not sound convincing. People do not help strangers every day without wanting something. Aaron glanced past her toward Henry. "Maybe that is true where you come from." The words were not cruel. That made them hurt more. From behind Aaron, a small figure hurried up the sidewalk beneath a bright blue umbrella. Sadie Mercer, 9 years old, clutched a covered pie against her chest. "Daddy, Mr. Henry's apple pie is getting wet." She reached the porch, then looked at Caroline. "Are you the lady from the picture?" Caroline stiffened. "What picture?" Sadie pointed through the open doorway. On the living room table, beneath the warm glow of a reading lamp, lay a leather folder stamped with the silver crest of Voss Meridian. Caroline recognized it immediately. It was an internal safety file, the kind that never left corporate headquarters. Across the front, written in Henry's careful hand, were 2 words that made the color drain from her face. Aaron Mercer. Caroline stepped toward the table, but Henry placed one trembling hand over the leather folder. "Not yet," he said. "First, you need to remember what you did." The rain softened against the windows, and for one suspended moment Caroline could hear nothing but the slow ticking of the clock above the fireplace. Then memory pulled her backward 6 months earlier into a windowless conference room on the 7th floor of Voss Meridian headquarters. Aaron Mercer sat alone at one end of a polished table beneath fluorescent lights that made every face look colder. His work shirt still carried the faint smell of machine oil from the night shift. Beside his elbow rested a black notebook filled with measurement dates and 3 weeks of unanswered warnings. Across from him sat Preston Wade, the chief operations officer, wearing a charcoal suit and the patient expression of a man who had already decided how the meeting would end. Caroline entered with 2 attorneys and did not sit down. "You delayed production." Preston slid a folder across the table. "You falsified equipment readings." A second page followed. "You cost this company nearly $2 million. Aaron looked at the papers, then at Caroline. "None of that is true." Preston leaned back. "The records disagree." The records were changed. The attorneys exchanged a glance. Caroline checked the time on her watch. Outside that room, 300 employees were waiting for her quarterly address. Investors were calling about shipment delays, and a hospital contract worth millions was hanging by a thread. She had entered believing the truth was already organized in neat pages. Aaron was the only person in the room who knew it was not. "I reported a calibration failure on line 4, he said. "The sensors drift when the housing temperature reaches 94 degrees. The monitors can pass inspection here and fail later in a warmer environment." Preston gave a tired sigh. "He has repeated this theory for weeks. It is not a theory." Aaron opened the black notebook. "I recorded every test." Caroline did not look down. "Our engineering team found no defect. Your engineering team tested the wrong conditions." "Enough," Preston said. Aaron ignored him and turned the notebook toward Caroline. 3 hospitals received units from that line. "Read the entries from April 12th. Caroline saw rows of careful handwriting, but she also saw Preston's official report signed by department head she trusted. One document looked personal, the other looked professional. Power often makes that mistake. It confuses polish with truth. "Mr. Mercer, Caroline said your access to company systems has been suspended. Effective immediately, your employment is terminated." The room became still. Aaron did not plead. He did not raise his voice. He closed the notebook and studied her with a quiet disappointment that felt heavier than anger. "You are signing a report you have not fully read." Caroline lifted her chin. "You are no longer in a position to challenge this decision." Aaron placed one hand on the notebook. "No, but one day you will open this, and you will wish you had looked me in the eye today." Preston smiled as security appeared at the door. Aaron stood gathered a cardboard box containing a coffee mug, a framed drawing from Sadie, and the employee badge he had worn for 11 years. At the threshold, he paused. "The machines are not the greatest risk in this building," he said softly. "The silence is." Then he walked away, leaving the black notebook behind on the table. Preston reached for it first. Caroline never saw where he took it until now. The morning after Aaron walked out of Voss Meridian, he woke before sunrise as if the alarm clock still owned him. For 11 years, he had left the house at 5:30, packed the same turkey sandwich, and kissed Sadie's forehead before driving to the plant. That morning, he sat alone at the kitchen table while the coffee cooled between his hands. His employee badge lay beside the sugar bowl, useless now, its blue plastic face catching the first gray light. Sadie entered wearing her school sweatshirt and stopped when she saw him. "Are you sick?" "No." "Then why are you home?" Aaron looked at his daughter, at the careful hope in her eyes, and chose the gentlest version of the truth. "The company and I disagreed about something important." "Did you lose your job?" He nodded. Sadie crossed the kitchen without another question and wrapped her arms around him. Outside, a garbage truck groaned down Cedar Street. Inside, Aaron closed his eyes and allowed himself 3 quiet seconds of fear. Then he stood and made breakfast. The weeks that followed measured themselves in overdue notices, rejected applications, and small repairs for neighbors who paid in folded bills or grocery store gift cards. Aaron replaced porch steps, cleaned gutters, tuned lawn mowers, and fixed anything with a wire hinge or stubborn engine. He sold his good watch. He canceled cable. He began counting every gallon of gas. When Sadie brought home a permission slip for a science museum trip costing $48, she left it unsigned beneath a stack of mail. "I do not really want to go," she said. Aaron knew she was lying because kindness sometimes wears the same face as sacrifice. Across the narrow yard lived Henry Callahan, a 78-year-old widower with silver hair, a sharp tongue, and a porch step that leaned like a tired tooth. Aaron first noticed him carrying 2 grocery bags through the rain. One bag split halfway up the walk, sending cans rolling into the grass. Aaron hurried over. "I have it." Henry tightened his grip on the remaining bag. "I did not ask." "That is true. Then leave it." Aaron picked up a can of tomato soup. "Your front step is loose. So is my patience. I can fix the step. I can fix it myself." Aaron looked at Henry's cane, then at the rotting board. "Then I am not helping you. I am only stopping that step from trying to kill you." Henry stared at him for a long moment, then stepped aside. Aaron repaired the board without charging him. The next day, he returned to tighten the porch railing. 2 days later, he replaced a broken cabinet hinge. By the end of the week, Sadie was sitting at Henry's kitchen table eating oatmeal cookies while the old man pretended not to enjoy her company. "Your father is stubborn," Henry told her. "You are worse," Sadie replied. Henry laughed so suddenly that he had to wipe his eyes. After that, Aaron came every afternoon. On Mondays, he organized Henry's medicine. On Wednesdays, he checked the furnace. On Fridays, he drove him 6 miles to the clinic. Henry complained each time, but he always left the porch light on. One evening, Aaron replaced its cracked yellow glass. "Why yellow?" Sadie asked. Henry leaned against the doorway. "Because white light tells people where a house is. Yellow light tells them someone is waiting." Aaron tested the switch, and a warm glow spread across the porch. Henry looked at him more seriously. "What if I need help after dark?" Aaron nodded toward the light. "Turn it on, and you will come every time." Henry held his gaze, searching for the price hidden behind the promise. There was none. So the old man nodded once, quietly accepting what pride had denied him for years. And from that night forward, whenever the yellow porch light burned after midnight, Aaron Mercer crossed the yard. At 2:13, one cold Tuesday morning, the yellow porch light flashed 3 times. Aaron was awake before the 3rd flicker ended. He crossed the bedroom, pulled on his boots, and hurried through the dark without stopping for a coat. Frost silvered between the 2 houses, and the air cut through his shirt as he climbed Henry's repaired steps. "Henry." No answer. "Henry, open the door." Silence. Aaron tried the handle. Unlocked. Inside, the kitchen clock ticked too loudly, and a kettle hissed dry on the stove. Henry sat on the floor beside the dining table, one shoulder pressed against the cabinet, his cane lying several feet away. His face was pale. His left hand rested uselessly in his lap. Aaron dropped beside him. "Look at me." Henry tried to speak, but the words came slowly and unevenly. "I am fine. No, you are not. Do not call anyone. That is not your decision tonight." Aaron reached for his phone and called emergency services. His voice remained calm as he gave the address, described Henry's symptoms, and checked the time. He turned off the stove, loosened Henry's collar, and kept him sitting upright. Outside, the distant sound of a siren began to rise through the sleeping neighborhood. "Stay with me," Aaron said. "I am tired. You can sleep later." "Bossy man, you noticed." Henry's mouth moved in the faintest shadow of a smile. Aaron kept talking because silence, in moments like that, could become a door someone slipped through. "Tell me about your granddaughter." Henry's eyes shifted toward him. "Why?" "Because you never do. She is busy, doing what Henry swallowed with effort. Running a company." Aaron glanced at the old family photographs lining the hallway, but none showed a recent face. What kind of company? A large one. That narrows it down. Henry breathed out something almost like a laugh, then winced. Red and blue light swept across the curtains. She was kind once, he whispered. Still is somewhere. Then why does she never visit? Henry looked toward the yellow porch light burning beyond the window. She learned to make decisions before she learned to listen. The paramedics entered moments later, bringing cold air, clipped questions, and the clean scent of medical equipment. Aaron answered what Henry could not. He listed the medications, the dosage times, the recent dizziness, and the missed lunch from the day before. One paramedic looked at him. Are you family? Aaron glanced at Henry. Neighbor. Henry lifted 2 fingers weakly from the stretcher. Family enough. At Mercy Ridge Hospital, Aaron sat beneath harsh white lights while Henry underwent tests. Dawn began to gray the windows before a nurse approached with a clipboard. Mr. Callahan listed 2 emergency contacts, she said. You are the second. Aaron nodded. Who was the first? The nurse turned the form so he could confirm the information. At the top, written in Henry's careful block letters, was a name Aaron had spent 6 months trying not to remember. Caroline Voss. Beneath it was the private number of the woman who had signed away his job without ever opening his notebook. Aaron folded the emergency contact form and handed it back to the nurse without saying Caroline's name aloud. Henry had survived a mild stroke, but the doctor ordered several days of observation and strict rest after discharge. Aaron stayed until sunrise, then returned home long enough to make Sadie breakfast and explain why Mr. Henry would not be sitting on his porch that morning. Caroline arrived at the hospital before noon in a dark wool coat, followed by an assistant carrying 2 phones and a leather briefcase. She moved quickly through the hallway until she saw Aaron sitting beside Henry's bed, adjusting the old man's water cup. Her steps stopped. You? Aaron looked up. He is stable. Why are you here? He asked me to stay. Caroline turned to Henry. Grandpa, do you know who this man is? Henry's tired eyes sharpened. Better than you do. Caroline dismissed her assistant and closed the door. Aaron Mercer worked for my company. Worked, Aaron said quietly. Until you fired him, Henry replied. The room settled into an uncomfortable silence. Machines hummed softly beside the bed and pale winter light rested across Henry's blanket. Caroline looked from her grandfather to Aaron, searching for an explanation that would return the world to an order she understood. How long has been going on? She asked. Months, Henry said. He brings groceries, fixes, things, make sure I take my medicine. Caroline's expression hardened. And you never thought to tell me. Henry looked toward the window. You never stayed on the phone long enough to ask. 2 days later, Henry returned home. Caroline went ahead to prepare the house and found evidence of Aaron in every room. Labels marked the medicine bottles in large, careful print. A new handrail ran along the basement stairs. The refrigerator held soup-fresh fruit, and containers dated in black ink. Beside the kitchen sink sat a repaired faucet that no longer dripped. None of it looked expensive. All of it looked personal. Caroline should have felt grateful. Instead, suspicion gave her somewhere safer to stand. By late afternoon, rain pressed against the windows, and Henry was resting in his chair when someone knocked. Caroline opened the door and found Aaron beneath the yellow porch light with medicine in one hand and his toolbox in the other. Do not let him inside, she said before Henry could speak. Aaron's face did not change. I came to check the furnace and bring his prescription. You knew who he was. I knew his name was Henry. You expect me to believe you helped him every day without knowing he was connected to me? Aaron looked past her toward the old man. Not everything is about you, Caroline. She flinched at the use of her first name. People do not give this much without wanting something. Aaron placed the medicine on the porch table. Then maybe you have spent too much time around people who only give when someone is watching. A bright blue umbrella appeared at the end of the walkway. Sadie hurried through the rain holding Henry's apple pie beneath her coat. Daddy, it is getting wet. She reached the porch and looked up at Caroline with open curiosity. Her sneakers were soaked and one lace had come undone. Are you Mr. Henry's granddaughter? Caroline nodded. Sadie smiled. He talks about you when he thinks nobody is listening. Something in Caroline's face softened, but only for a second. Henry rose slowly from his chair. "Caroline, bring them inside. Grandpa, I am trying to protect you from the man who saved my life." His voice was weak, but his dignity filled the room. He pointed toward the leather folder on the table. "You want to know what Aaron wanted from me? Open that." Caroline turned toward the silver crest of Voss Meridian and saw Aaron Mercer's name written across the front. Henry met her eyes. "But when you read it, remember this. He never asked me for money, a job, or revenge. He only asked me to stay alive." Caroline crossed the room and lifted the leather folder, as though it might contain something heavier than paper. Aaron remained near the doorway, rainwater darkening the shoulders of his jacket, while Sadie placed the apple pie on Henry's kitchen counter. "Open it," Henry said. Caroline broke the seal. The first page was not a complaint, a demand, or a request for money. It was a temperature chart. Rows of dates, serial numbers, and test results filled the page in Aaron's precise handwriting. Line 4. Caroline whispered. Aaron said nothing. She turned another page. The readings changed whenever the plastic housing reached 94 degrees. At normal room temperature, the monitors passed inspection. Under warmer conditions, the sensors drifted far enough to delay an emergency alert. Caroline looked up. "Where did this come from?" "The notebook you refused to read." Henry answered. "That notebook disappeared." "No," said a woman's voice from the hallway. Everyone turned. Elena Brooks stood just inside the open door, clutching a raincoat around her shoulders and a small flash drive in her hand. Caroline recognized her as a records manager from Voss Meridian. "Preston took the original," Elena said. "I made copies before he ordered the files deleted." Caroline's expression tightened. "Why did you give them to my grandfather?" Elena looked at Aaron before answering. "Because I was afraid to bring them to you." The words landed quietly, but they changed the air. Caroline had built a company where employees feared bad news more than bad products, and she was hearing that truth in her grandfather's living room. Elena placed the flash drive beside the folder. "The original emails are there." Aaron reported the defect 3 times. Each report was rerouted through Preston's office. The timestamps were changed, and Aaron's access history was edited to make it look like he altered the test results. Caroline turned another page. There were 3 hospital names, shipment dates, and a handwritten note beneath them. "If they do not listen to me, children will pay the price." Her fingers stopped moving. "You wrote this?" she asked. Aaron met her eyes. "Yes." "Why did you not go public?" "Because a public panic before we confirmed the affected units could have caused hospitals to stop using safe monitors too. You were trying to protect the company. I was trying to protect the patients." Henry reached toward the small medical monitor beside his chair. "Tell her which model this is." Caroline looked at the label. Her face lost its color. It was one of the units manufactured on line 4, the same model tracking Henry's heart rhythm since his discharge. She stepped closer and checked the serial number against Aaron's list. The room became utterly still. Rain whispered against the windows. The refrigerator motor clicked off. Even Sadie stopped moving. Caroline read the number once, then again, hoping dignity might allow the truth to change if she looked carefully enough. It did not. Henry's monitor belonged to the flag shipment. "Is it dangerous?" she asked. Aaron moved beside the device and checked its current reading. "It may be accurate right now, but the housing is warm. Then fix it. I cannot fix a system failure with a screwdriver." Caroline looked at him, and for the first time since he had known her, there was no authority in her voice. Only fear. "What do we do?" Aaron unplugged the unit, replaced it with the backup monitor from Henry's medical bag, and handed Caroline the defective device. "You listen," he said. "Then you tell the truth before someone else has to pay for our silence." By 8 o'clock the next morning, the executive conference room at Voss Meridian was filled with board members, attorneys, department heads, and the kind of silence that appears when powerful people realize the truth may cost them something. Caroline stood at the head of the table with Henry's defective monitor beside her, and Aaron's copied reports spread beneath the white light. Aaron sat near the far end wearing the same brown work jacket he had worn on Henry's porch. He had no attorney, no title, and no reason to trust anyone in that room. Preston Wade entered last. He glanced at Aaron, then at the monitor, and smiled as though the meeting had been arranged for his convenience. "This is highly irregular," he said. Caroline did not sit. 3 safety reports were suppressed. "That is not true. Their timestamps were altered. Also untrue." "Then explain the original files." Preston placed both hands on the table. "Gladly." He nodded toward the screen and a video began to play. Granny security footage showed Aaron alone online 4 after midnight, opening a control panel and connecting a diagnostic cable. The recording jumped forward. A warning light appeared. Another jump showed Aaron entering data at a terminal. Preston paused the image. "There is your answer. Mr. Mercer interfered with the equipment, created false readings, and then blamed management when his misconduct was discovered." Quiet murmurs moved through the room. One board member removed his glasses. Another leaned back as if the matter had already been settled. Aaron watched the frozen image without blinking. "Play the entire recording," he said. Preston looked almost amused. "That is the entire relevant recording?" "No," Aaron replied. "That is the part you kept." Caroline turned toward Preston. "Is there more?" "This man has already cost the company millions. Now he has gained access to confidential records through your grandfather." Aaron's voice remained low. Elena gave Henry the files after Mr. Mercer pressured her. Elena rose from a chair near the wall. He did not. Preston barely looked at her. "You are under investigation as well." 2 security officers appeared outside the glass doors. Preston faced Caroline. For the protection of this company, he should be removed. Caroline hesitated. It lasted only a second, but Aaron saw it. The same second had existed 6 months earlier, just before she signed his termination papers. He stood on his own. "You still have not learned," he said. Caroline's eyes tightened. "Aaron, wait. Truth does not become safer because it is escorted from the room." He walked toward the door without resistance. In the reception area, Henry sat in a wheelchair beside Sadie, who was drawing beneath the warm light of a floor lamp. She looked up as Aaron approached. "Are we leaving?" "Not yet." Inside the conference room, Preston continued speaking, his polished voice flowing through the glass walls. Sadie reached into her backpack. "Mr. Henry said to give this to Miss Caroline if people started lying." She held up a small silver flash drive with a faded blue ribbon tied around it. Henry gave Aaron a tired smile. "Elena sent me the full security archive last night. Sadie copied it while helping me organize the files." Aaron looked through the glass at Caroline, who now stood alone against a room full of doubt. Sadie Rose opened the conference room door and walked directly to her. No one stopped the 9-year-old girl. "My dad says the truth should not need permission," she said, placing the drive in Caroline's hand. Caroline inserted it into the computer. A longer video appeared. This time the recording did not jump. It showed Aaron testing the machine, documenting the defect, and calling Preston to the floor. Then Preston stepped into view, read the warning report, and spoke clearly enough for every person in the room to hear. "Delete the failed run. We ship Friday." Caroline moved the video forward. Preston ordered the logs changed. He ordered Aaron's access records rewritten. He even said the sentence that ended every whisper in the room. "If Mercer refuses, make him the failure." The screen went black. Nobody spoke. Caroline turned slowly toward Preston, holding the flash drive in one hand and the weight of her own mistake in the other. "You did not protect this company," she said. "You taught it to fear the truth." Preston's confidence disappeared, but his voice remained polished. "You are making a serious mistake, Caroline." She held his gaze. "No, I made the serious mistake 6 months ago." The boardroom seemed to shrink around him. The air conditioner hummed. Above the long table and the frozen black screen reflected 30 silent faces waiting to see whether power would protect itself again. Preston straightened his jacket. "The investors demanded the shipment. We were under extraordinary pressure." Aaron stepped back into the room. He did not look triumphant. He looked tired. "Pressure did not create your character," he said. "It revealed it." No one moved. Caroline placed the flash drive beside Henry's monitor. Preston waved. "Effective immediately, you are terminated from Voss Meridian. Security will escort you from the building. All relevant records will be preserved for federal investigators and state regulators." Preston stared at her. "You cannot do this without destroying the company. A company that survives by hiding danger does not deserve to survive unchanged." Security entered. Preston gathered nothing. He walked past Aaron without meeting his eyes, and the glass doors closed behind him with a soft click. Caroline turned to the board. "Stop all shipments from Line 4. Notify every hospital on Aaron Mercer's list. Begin a voluntary recall and establish a 24-hour support line before noon." One director shook his head. "That could cost tens of millions. Then we will pay tens of millions." Her voice did not rise. "Patients will not pay for our silence." The room quieted again, but this silence was different. It was no longer fear hiding behind authority. It was accountability finally entering the room. Caroline looked toward Aaron. Sadie and Henry watched through the glass, the old man's hand resting gently on the girl's shoulder. Caroline stepped away from the head of the table until no chair title or polished surface stood between her and the man she had wronged. "6 months ago, I signed your termination without reading your evidence. I trusted rank instead of truth. I allowed your reputation to be damaged, your income to disappear, and your daughter to carry consequences that belong to me." Aaron's jaw tightened, but he remained still. "I cannot ask you to forget that," she continued, "and I will not insult you by calling this a misunderstanding. It was a failure of leadership. My failure." She turned so every employee could hear her. "Aaron Mercer warned this company 3 times. We punished him for telling the truth. His record will be cleared today, his lost wages restored, and a public correction issued under my name." A few people lowered their eyes. Elena covered her mouth as tears gathered there. Caroline faced Aaron again. "I want you to return as Vice President of Safety." Aaron answered without hesitation. "No." The word landed harder than applause. Caroline absorbed it. "You deserve more authority. Authority is not the same as change. Then tell me what change looks like." Aaron glanced around the room where he had once stood alone. "An independent safety office, direct access to the board, written protection for every employee who reports a risk. No executive, including you, gets to bury a warning." One director began to object, but Caroline raised her hand. "Agreed." Aaron studied her carefully. "And Elena leads records integrity." Caroline nodded. "Agreed. The recall comes before the press release." "Agreed." Only then did Aaron look through the glass at Sadie. She smiled, small and proud. He turned back to Caroline. "I will help build it, but I am not coming back because you rescued me." Caroline's eyes softened. "I know." Aaron looked at Henry's defective monitor, then at the black screen that had exposed everything. "I am coming back because the next person who speaks should not have to lose everything before someone listens." Around them the room remained silent, not stunned by wealth, power, or revenge, but by the quiet dignity of a man who had been given the chance to punish those who hurt him and chose instead to protect the people who would come after him. Still burned every evening on Cedar Street, but Henry no longer needed to flash it 3 times. His strength had returned, slowly measured in short walks to the mailbox, stubborn arguments about his medicine and Sunday dinners that somehow grew from 3 people to 4. Aaron's new safety office occupied a modest floor at Voss Meridian, far from the executive suites and close to the factory workers who needed it. Most reports could now be filed without permission from a supervisor. Every warning received a tracking number. Every investigation left a record, and no executive could erase either one. The recall had cost the company millions, but no hospital reported a patient harmed by the defective monitors. Caroline called that fortunate. Aaron called it the result of telling the truth before luck ran out. His name had been cleared publicly, his lost wages restored, and Sadie finally took the science museum trip she had pretended not to want. She returned with a small model of the human heart and placed it on Henry's mantel. "It reminds me of everybody," she said. "It looks simple until you see how much work it takes to keep it going." Henry laughed. Caroline did not. She understood exactly what the girl meant. Caroline changed in ways that could not be measured by quarterly reports. She attended safety meetings without speaking first. She visited the factory floor without an assistant. When an employee disagreed with her, she asked for the evidence instead of the person's title. Redemption did not arrive as one grand apology. It appeared in small choices repeated when no one was applauding. Aaron noticed, though he never made it easy for her. Respect returned slowly between them, then trust, then something quieter that neither of them tried to name. One cool October evening, Aaron was helping Sadie with homework when someone knocked on the front door. He opened it and found Caroline standing beneath the porch light. There was no driver at the curb, no assistant holding a schedule, and no expensive gift wrapped in silver paper. She carried Henry's old yellow porch lamp, newly polished but carefully preserved, and 2 tickets to a traveling science exhibit Sadie had talked about for weeks. Aaron looked at the tickets. "You do not have to buy your way into this house." Caroline nodded. "I know. Then why are you here to ask?" The wind moved through the maple trees, sending dry leaves across the steps with a soft scrape. Caroline stood without the armor of her office, waiting for an answer she could not command. Sadie appeared behind Aaron and saw the tickets. Her face brightened, but she looked at her father before saying anything. Caroline lowered her voice. "I cannot change the day I fired you. I cannot give back the nights you worried about your daughter or the moment she hid that permission slip, but I can keep becoming someone who would never make that choice again." Aaron studied her for a long time. "That takes more than one apology. Then I will not stop at one." From across the yard, Henry switched on his porch light. Its warm glow reached the steps where they stood, the same light that had once called Aaron into the darkness to save an old man's life. Sadie opened the door wider. "Dinner is almost ready," she said. "We have enough." Caroline looked at Aaron, still waiting. At last he stepped aside. "Come in." She crossed the threshold quietly, not as a chief executive officer, not as the woman who had once held power over his future, but as someone who had learned that a second chance was not something money could purchase. It was something humility had to earn. Some doors open because of status, some open because of fear. But the doors that lead to home open only when truth, grace, and respect arrive together. Tell us in the comments what moved you most. Aaron's quiet dignity, Caroline's decision to take responsibility, or Henry's faith that kindness would eventually bring the truth to light. And thank you for watching this video all the way to the end.